Hi guys, I'm Matt Schlicht from Zapchain, and I'm here with Brian Gamido, CEO of Palarin. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, Matt.
So today we're going to be educating everybody about Bitcoin. It can be kind of a complicated and intimidating subject, but hopefully you can enlighten us.
Yeah, I'll try.
So tell us a little bit about Palarin.
Yeah, sure thing. So Palarin is the best way to buy, sell, and use Bitcoin in the Philippines. Actually, Palarin is the Tagalog word for prosper, and the thinking is we want people to prosper through new financial tools and technologies vis-a-vis Bitcoin. So right now there's a huge need for financial tools. Just to throw out some stats, 75% of the people in the Philippines don't have bank accounts.
Wow.
97% of the people don't have credit cards. So you can already see by those numbers that Bitcoin can really kind of revolutionize consumer finance within the country.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So when did you learn about Bitcoin? Like, it's been around for like a little over 5 years now. Like,
Yeah.
Was it 5 years ago or?
Yeah, so I would say like it was about 5 years ago. I think similar to a lot of people, they first heard about Bitcoin through their crazy tech friend, right? So in my case, I was on the golf course. My friend was telling me about this crazy thing called Bitcoin when we were, I don't know, on the ninth hole. And at the time, it just sounded like some kind of crazy, magic, shady money that was used for drugs and guns. So I kind of quickly dismissed that. But around 2012, 2013, it really entered or re-entered the psyche of me and also the people in general. So as the value of a Bitcoin was rising, it was in the news all throughout pretty much 2013. That's when I really started getting interested in it because obviously the media was interested. And from a technology perspective, I just started to grasp what it really meant. So like a lot of folks, again, I started reading the white paper from Satoshi, and that was the beginning of the rabbit hole, right? Once you dig deeper and deeper into the technology, you really start to understand some of the great impacts that it could have in the world.
So the white paper is a pretty hardcore place to start, probably with Bitcoin. By the way, for anyone that doesn't know yet, Satoshi Nakamoto, the guy that made the white paper, is also this person that created Bitcoin, and we have no idea who it is. Brian has known about Bitcoin for 5 years, so maybe Brian's actually Satoshi. Are you?
Okay, we'll talk about it later, Matt.
Okay. So did you find, like, you read the white paper, was it confusing? Like, was there something about Bitcoin that you didn't understand and kind of like got you angry enough to try to figure it out?
Yeah, so I thought it was very confusing. I think the paper was written somewhat cryptically, I guess, but I think once I read more and more articles about it, once I really read about some of the people in the space that really boiled down what Bitcoin was, it really, I had that realization that it was really profound and it would have a lot of impacts on the world. Like, for instance, the idea of it being a decentralized digital currency, not really tied to any one financial institution or government. I thought that concept alone was revolutionary and impactful to a lot of different countries. Also, the fact that it really solved one of the oldest cryptography problems known to man, like the double spend problem. I thought that was also very interesting and impactful.
So for a lot of these people watching right now who are learning about Bitcoin, do you have any words of encouragement for them if they're like currently really frustrated?
Yeah, it's definitely very frustrating to learn about in the onset, but I would say keep on reading a lot of the articles, a lot of the people eminent in the space. A lot of people have been pretty good about boiling down the concepts of Bitcoin, how it actually applies to people's everyday lives. And I think the more and more you read about it, the more you slowly get to understand not only the underlying technology, but a lot of the practical use cases. So, Forbes has written about it, Wall Street Journal has written about it. There's a lot of good content on Zapchain that people can read. CoinDesk, has a lot of good content, and the more and more you read about it, the more and more it becomes real. Right. That's what I would encourage folks to do.
So, with a lot of people who've been working on Bitcoin companies for various amounts of time, some people started 4 years ago, and then maybe some of those companies don't exist now, but out of the companies that exist today, which ones do you think are innovating the most? Like, which innovative Bitcoin companies are you most excited about right now?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of innovation, I think the bread and butter Bitcoin company is Coinbase. So I think they are definitely established here in the U.S. And as I understand or really observe their strategy, it sounds like they are trying to be cutting edge and making sure that they apply a lot of the latest and greatest techniques and innovations of Bitcoin. So I would say that they are, in terms of innovation, I think they're got their head in the direction in the right place. I don't know about one particular company, but one thing that excites me in terms of innovation is the whole idea of Bitcoin 2.0, so the concept of smart contracts. And for those of you that aren't as familiar with smart contracts, it's essentially storing information in blockchain type technology so that you have an immutable source for previous transactions. And boiling that further, what that means is maybe one practical use case is the transfer of title. So when I buy a property, I have to go down to the city office, make sure that whoever I'm buying the house from actually owns the house, and go through the long, painstaking, and paper-intensive process of actually transferring ownership. If that transaction was applied to, or if blockchain technology was applied to that particular transaction using smart contracts, that is an innovation that I think will be very important for people in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ethereum, they aren't, I guess not really a company, but they have a technology, but the whole idea of Turing complete type of notions will apply to this space.
I mean, it would be like the government, like at least the U.S. government and a lot of other governments work with paper.
Right, exactly.
Quite a bit, which is just not, doesn't make sense at all. Because
yeah,
it's
exactly.
really hard to track. So it would be awesome if in a couple of years they were actually built on top of blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. We live in a digital age. Everything should be within a click away, stored in ones and zeros, and that includes a lot of these big purchase transactions. And I think that's where things are going.
So what global applications do you think Bitcoin has?
Yeah, so I think Bitcoin has a potential to really impact global finance. So back to Paladin, what we're trying to do is really solve consumer finance for the people of the Philippines. One big use case, just to give you a sense, is remittances. And just for some people that don't know, remittances are the act of transferring money or value from one place to the next. How that specifically applies to the Philippines is about $20 billion is sent to the Philippines every year. They have this concept in the Philippines of OFWs, and that means overseas Filipino workers. So in the Philippines, about a third of the population is underneath the poverty line. So that's a lot of folks. And how they define poverty in the Philippines is people living off less than $400 a year. So if you think about that, that's like, wow. That is $1 a day. So what happens is about 10 to 11 million actually leave the Philippines. And that means leaving their family, friends, parents, to find better job opportunities abroad. So people come to the United States, people go to Singapore, people go to Canada, with the sole purpose of, earning a decent wage so that their children can eat. And as I mentioned, on an annual basis, that is $20 billion going back to the country, representing about 10 to 11% of the country's GDP. So the magnitude for the Philippines in particular, it's huge. The use case that Bitcoin applies, or the use case that Bitcoin addresses, is remittances, because right now the traditional way people remit money are through your companies like Western Union, MoneyGram, banks, which traditionally can be pretty expensive, anywhere from 4 to 10%, really depending on the amount of money you want to send. And when I observed that trend, I thought it was, very, very inefficient. Once you apply Bitcoin to that space, if it was a pure Bitcoin to Bitcoin transaction, you take those transaction costs down to close to zero. If, say I was just sending you Bitcoin and you were in the Philippines and I was in the US. So I think that is one of the holy grail use cases of Bitcoin applied to international developing and emerging countries.
Yeah, and it's super exciting that Bitcoin and technology could actually have an impact like that. And I think it's, maybe for a lot of people watching, they may have heard of Bitcoin and they think of it as, like you were saying on the golf course, it was Bitcoin's for guns,
right.
Bitcoin is for illegal drugs,
right?
It's magic internet money. But
exactly.
What most people don't realize, but are maybe starting to, is that Bitcoin is actually this massive technology that can make people's lives better.
Absolutely. And I just talked about the Philippine use case there, and again, the numbers are pretty staggering. It's about $20 billion. When you look at that use case, I guess globally, all the quarters together, the global remittance market is north of $500 billion. So when you think of Bitcoin being applied to that space in its entirety, there's just a huge potential for efficiencies, for people being able to transact in a better way.
So what other impacts do you think Bitcoin can have in like emerging countries?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like another thing that maybe we take for granted here in the Western world is the ability to make payments. So in the States, the penetration rate for credit cards is very high. And then you compare that to the stat that I told you earlier in the conversation that 97% of people in the Philippines don't have credit cards. So what that means is people just aren't really able to pay non-cash transactions. So if they want to buy something, from the Philippine Groupon or buy something online through Amazon, there's not an efficient way to do so. But once people start adopting Bitcoin, they could use it as a pretty efficient payment mechanism to buy things online, send value, and then receive whatever goods or services that they wanted to receive.
Do they have any way to do that right now?
So right now, it's very manual. So what they do is, if I want to buy something online, you get a paper voucher, and then with that paper voucher, you have to walk to either the retail store or the bank to deposit money, which kind of defeats the purpose of an online transaction, right? Because you still have to walk outside your house, walk to the local store, and buy something. So there's workarounds around it. Obviously, there's got to be a better way.
Paddling.
Exactly. Paddling should enable people to do that. So that's kind of the goal.
Wow, that's awesome. So, as if Bitcoin continues to grow, which it's growing really fast right now,
right?
What kind of impact do you think Bitcoin will have on the world in like 2 or 3 years, or maybe even like 10 years?
Yeah, so I think like the long-term impacts will be enormous. Like I mentioned earlier, I really think it's a catalyst or an enabler to really transform consumer finance and even probably institutional finance. I don't know if it's going to completely replace conventional financial institutions. There is a place for banks. I think there is a place for fiat currency. But now when you add another technology-enabled mechanism, I think it's just going to be more ways to spend money, more ways to use money, more ways to transfer value. So right now, probably Bitcoin penetration it's growing, but it's still relatively low compared to wallets per capita, I guess, per country. But I see that trend continuing I see that adoption continuing to increase, and once it is used as a regular payment method for every merchant, for every store, it'll just be a lot more easier, a lot more frictionless for people to use currency.
Right. I mean, and hopefully more people are eating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? Like it actually has a really great impact.
Absolutely.
Even if all the other like smart contracts and all these other
right.
things don't end up working out, if that was the only thing Bitcoin did, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Like as long as value is being directed to where it's intended, and that's the mouths of hungry kids or whatnot, I think that's of huge benefit and huge impact globally and internationally.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for kind of walking us through this and giving us your insights on Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a lot of really interesting things, and I think that everyone watching appreciates that Bitcoin is not just for drugs and guns.
Right, exactly.
It's for helping kids that aren't eating, at the very least.
Exactly.
Cool.
That's a great point.
All right. Bye, guys.